Welcome to the Rich, Young, and Powerful podcast. This is the place where we help average givers become everyday philanthropists. I'm your host, Andrew McNair, financial commentator, author, nine-figure wealth manager, and philanthropist too. I'm going to show you how to give more, how to find more fulfillment, and help you impact the causes that you care about the most. Because when a giver gives more, they receive and become more. And I am just really excited as someone that tries to work out and stay in shape. This is one individual, one guest that I'm really excited to bring on, because if you take your workout seriously, if you take out your health very seriously, you probably already know my guest. He doesn't need a big introduction, but Rich Froning is 10 times CrossFit champion. He's got 6-time team champion, 4 times individual. And he's also a successful businessman as well with CrossFit, Mayhem, and Froning Farms. So this gentleman is super busy. So Rich, welcome to the show.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. You know, you're saying you try to be in shape, but hey, that's all you can ask for is trying. You know, that's I always kind of equate it. Phil Robertson was talking about, you know, love God, try to be good. That's what we're called to do. And hey, love God and try to be fit. There you go. So
I just really wanted to fill out this shirt. You know,
hey, looks plenty filled out to me.
I'm repping out this gear today, and you should check out. He's got some really cool apparel on the website. So I was just really excited to hear I wasn't the only crazy person who listens to worship music while you work out. So I'm not the only crazy one that does that.
No, I love it, man. It's funny when you get people that come in and they're like, wow, you actually listen to this. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, especially with what I do and having been competed for years and years, I need no help getting into the whatever zone, whatever you want to call it. So I almost need something to kind of chill me out a little bit. And it gets me fired up at the same time. It's just a different type of fired up.
Absolutely. So now I have a home gym. And it's not as crazy, like, you know, you either raise your hands or be actually singing and there's no one else there.
Yep.
I'm sure, like, if I actually, you know, was worshiping and it got caught, you know, singing just a little bit, people are like, I think that guy's insane. That guy's crazy. We should distance ourselves.
Come work out at Mayhem. You'll see people singing all the time. You're good.
You know, what's funny. I didn't even had this plan to talk about, but my buddy does Ironmans, and he was telling me about that when you're doing an Ironman, I thought, oh, you just probably put the earbuds in and you just go to work. And he's like, no, for like safety reasons, you can't have that. And I'm like, that brings a whole different mental game. And I'm sure it's the same way in the CrossFit games as well, right?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, they're playing music usually during events and calling out stuff. But once you kind of, with what we do, especially those shorter, kind of more intense events, you're just in your own headspace. I couldn't even tell you half the time what music has been played. I could very rarely think back to my career when I competed and pick out separate events. And I was like, oh, I remember this random song playing, but it was more of like, if I was in the lead and wasn't in any type of pressure or anything like that, you could kind of just enjoy the moment for a second. I rarely remember. I remember in the games in 2014, the Fort Minor Remember the Name song was on in the stadium. That's for some reason, that song, I remember that moment. But I actually did the Leadville 100 mountain bike race this year. And while I was training all year, I would keep one headphone in and I listened to audiobooks. And so I listened, I'm a weird kind of American history buff. So I'm to William Henry Harrison on the presidential biography list. And, you know, actually during the race, I just listened to, it's a book called Day of War. It's historical fiction about King David and his men. And I've read the book 3 or 4 times. And so, you know what, I had that in where I could kind of zone in and zone out of the whole book throughout the whole race. And so that, you know, that's played out pretty well for me too on those kind of longer endurance race events. So,
you know, I mean, just in practicing for a race like that, you have to be on a bike a lot.
Oh,
so I'm sure you can go through some books.
Yeah, well, you know, music, I tried music for a while. And then when you're on a bike for 3 or 4 hours, you're like, I can't listen to the same songs over and over again for 3 or 4 hours. So I found out that listening to audiobooks, and I have to listen to them at 1.5. It's a weird, my brain has to have something to chase versus get ahead of it. If it's too slow, I check out. So
that makes total sense. Hey, have you actually read or listened to anything on Teddy Roosevelt yet? Are you up?
No, I can't wait to get there. I'm not there yet. I'm pretty fired up. My my newest passion is kind of outdoors and hunting. So
and bison, right?
And bison. Yep.
He definitely hunted bison a lot.
He hunted bison, and he was very instrumental on bringing bison back. They were almost extinct, and he was one of the presidents that was like, "Hey, we've got to do something about this." And he's a huge conservationist, big hunter, but also conservationist, which is really cool.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite presidents. So in my library, I got these busts of presidents, and it's because I read biographies on all of them, like Lincoln and George. But on Teddy, I'm into this two books out of 3 trilogy. I mean, each of them are like 600 pages.
Jeez.
So I'm dedicated to learn about old Teddy. But you're going to love it because you're exactly right. Spot on. He's an amazing president. So I digress. I do want to talk about, is that always been intentional about putting good inputs to your body? I mean, a lot of people, and I was one of those, like I grew up listening to Tupac while I was working out, and Bones and Thugs and Harmony, and those were fantastic songs when you're working out back in the day. But, trying to, not only just put better things in my body, not putting sewage into my body, I wanted to elevate what goes into my ears and eyes. Was that intentional for you?
Yeah, 100%, man. I grew up, just short back history. I grew up in, I was born and raised Catholic. My grandma, Violet, I'm 99% sure she has a direct line to God. She, watches mass every day. The woman knows the Bible. She's amazing. My mom, both my parents, we had to go to church. And for me growing up, it was something I had to do, not something that I wanted to do. And then I'd say my parents divorced the first time. They divorced and got back together a couple times with each other, but that's a completely different story. But in the process, we would go to kind of a non-denominational or Presbyterian Baptist church, and then I'd go to a Catholic church, kind of back and forth. So I got, a little bit of teaching, and everybody has their good stuff and their bad stuff. And, and when I was 13, I would say that I was saved and gave my life to God, and, didn't really live how we're called to live, thought, if I needed something, I would read my Bible every night, but it was more of, hey, what can you do for me, God? Not what can I do for you? And so all kind of growing up, I would, whatever I was doing, whether it was high school baseball, then it was college baseball, then I was a firefighter for years, and then I found CrossFit. And whatever I was doing at the time, or where I could kind of get recognition, that was kind of what defined who I was as a person. And then when I got second at the CrossFit Games in 2010, it was, I don't want to say it was a dark place, and no way was I, actually depressed or anything like that, but really made me kind of to, I guess, look inward. And luckily I had some really good mentors at the time. I had just started at Tennessee Tech as an assistant strength coach, and the strength coach there is very faith-driven. He's now kind of the chaplain for the football team and in charge of campus outreach in Cookeville. And so he was very instrumental. And so we just started a Bible study kind of at lunch, and started going through Romans, I remember. And then I had a really good friend. We were on a road trip, and he was like, if you were to die today, would you go to heaven? I'm like, yeah, of course I would. And, you start thinking about it, and you're like, dang, I don't know what that really looks like, what that means. And so I started in Matthew and just read through the gospel, and was like, dang, I'm not living like I was called to live. And so, I was baptized or dedicated to the church when I was 3 months old as a Catholic. And then, I guess, again, when I was 2011, so 24, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get baptized again. And I want it to be not that there's anything wrong, I don't think, with dedicating or getting baptized as a child, but I wanted to make that decision for myself. And so I was baptized, and that's when I got the Galatians 6:14 tattooed on my side. And man, I never boast in anything except for the cross of the Lord Jesus Christ, which has been crucified to me and I to the world. And so for me, that was like, hey, let me show you what God's done for me and tell as many people as I can about Jesus. And that, to get to your answer, was kind of when I started, we were listening to Eminem, and Eminem still at times, I'm like, it's good to try to, with the kids around, have the clean version. We're all grown-ups here. We can hear cuss words, but when my kids are around, I try to, keep it pretty clean, but every once in a while. But what I noticed is even now, like, we kind of went with, all right, we can't go straight to worship music. I was like, I can't work out to that. So we did Lecrae and Tripoli and some of those. And then in that kind of process, we made our way to, Elevation and Jesus Culture and, some of these other worship music. And so it was kind of a transformation. And then every once in a while, like, let's be honest, when people, you can't just like thump them with it all the time if they want to hear it. So it's like, all right, we'll give somebody else the radio for today. And we're like, as long as kids aren't around, whatever. But what I've noticed is when that stuff is around, I'm not angry, but I'm just like, I notice a difference. And so I'm just better, like you're saying, positive in, positive out. And I've come to that realization that I'm a better person and a better example when I'm listening to that stuff. And that can go with, am I getting in the Word every day? And that kind of goes with who I am as Faith, Family, Fitness. And, those things are important to me, and I've got to make sure. And I know that if I'm in the Word every day, just a better person.
Absolutely. Well, I think anyone could listen, even if you, like you said, go straight to worship music. Like KB is a great, artist.
Oh yeah, yep.
His music is fantastic. But I think it's Zig Ziglar should get the credit on this. He said, if someone came to your house, a stranger, and took their garbage and just poured it out into your family's living room after you invited them in, this complete stranger, you'd be like, hey, we don't know each other, but you got to leave. You just poured trash in my living room. But he said, let that happen in our news, on our TV. We just pour trash into the living room. And we can do the same thing in our gym, too. Like, you're exactly right. Like, when I listen to Tupac now, it's like, it's still poetry, still great music, but like it sends my mind in a completely different way of prioritizing money, chasing after women. And like, those are the things of the old. That's like my old self that I've shed off. And I'm not trying to put that old dead skin back on me. So I think I would like to go back and just talk about like this change. I mean, you go through it so quickly, but like there was a part of you before that question was positioned to you about where your salvation was, where your eternity was, that I think definitely check me out if I'm not right on this, but you would consider yourself a Christian at that point, but it was more like out of duty. It was a label. It was not a true self. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. I would have, and I don't want to, like, I still had good friends, good people around, but wasn't living like, I feel like Christ calls us to live, to, tell people about him. And if not even if you're not a like very vocal person, but if somebody was to look at your life and say, oh yeah, that guy lives for Christ. I wasn't living that, like, yeah, I would give. Yeah, I would, volunteer time, still, what we would qualify as a good person. But it was, like I said, it was more of that Santa Claus God, like, all right, let me read my Bible, but how can I twist it to where it's in my favor? Not listening, the highlights of the Bible, not those things that, where where it tells us to do the hard things. And so, it wasn't a relationship, it was more of a Coke machine or a candy machine. It's like, all right, when I needed God, which, I've still fallen into that trap. Like the times I'm closest to God are probably the times when life is hardest. And so I'm doing and working on to where when things are good and there's not any kind of turmoil in my life, I still want to make sure that he's prioritized and that I'm in the Word every day. And I've got a good group of guys that I kind of we have a daily devotional, and we have a group me or a group chat that we kind of put our thoughts in there. But yeah, at that time I was not doing that. It was more of like I said, just very what can I get from you, not what can I do for you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that relate. I know I definitely relate. Like it was a label for me, and like we talked about off the the record, but I was just talking about how I did a disservice to Christianity. Like I confused so many people. Like this person says he's a Christian, he goes maybe even to church sometimes, but he lives just like the world. Like there's no fruit that was coming from my life. And when you start to make your faith your own and not your parents' faith or your grandparents' faith, and you make it your own and you actually get in the Word, it is so different than what we use chewed up bits from our pastor. But when you start reading it for yourself, and like Jesus is calling us to a completely different life, like where when we get to the end of our life and he says, no, even the demons knew who I was, and like Jesus says, like people are going to say, Jesus, we talked about you. We said we were Christians. And he's going to say, depart from me. I never knew you because you never had any fruit of your life. I mean, there was no obedience to me. There was no seeking after me. It was just a label. And so I'm glad you talked about that because I know a lot of people can relate, and I certainly did. I do want to talk about identity because this has to do with the verse you mentioned earlier. You've been recognized as the fittest man in the world multiple times. How do you avoid not having your head explode?
Well, I have a good wife that lets me know every day that I'm not that awesome. No, she's the best and, probably my biggest fan. But, you need those people in your life that bring you back down to earth. And one of the beauties of CrossFit, even if you win overall, you still get beat in some events. So it's I wouldn't say it'd be difficult not to get the big head, but we've got a good group of people. I've got a great team, and I know that that's not who I am. It's something that I do, and that's something that I've over the years that it's something that I've had to work on. Obviously, it's not something that overnight you're like it's easy, and so kind of defining who I was, and we've got a guy here that kind of helps with like you were saying. It's not my parents' faith or my grandparents' faith. It's my faith, but also you got to figure out who you are as a person as well. And so, we've got kind of values here that we use at the gym, but they're my personal values. And like I said earlier, it's faith, family, fitness, and service. And so I kind of look at every day. I try to be as objective as possible and look at how I did in my faith. Did I get in the Word? Did I live like Christ called us to live with my immediate family, with my family here at the gym, or just community? And then how did I do with the family? Was I a good dad, good husband? And then how was my fitness? And then are we serving in the community or serving here at the gym or wherever it is? So I do that personally, but also as a gym, as our actual company, Mayhem, we do kind of an assessment pretty regularly on how we're doing. And so it's I think it's something you need to aim at. It's something that you're not always going to get right. You need to have a short memory when you do well and a short memory when you're not doing so well. It's just consistency across time.
Well, how do you build this culture? And a lot of business owners can relate to this. How do you build a culture of friends, family, team that will just level with you and not let you have that big head and will tell you how it is? Because many times they may feel like they're in a shadow where they can't share honestly or can't give genuine feedback. Is there any way you would encourage that person to create an environment to allow for open dialogue?
I think it comes with miles with people. Luckily, a lot of the guys and girls we have here have been here for a long time, and I don't think it's something that happens overnight. And I feel like I want that, and I encourage that. Hey, give it to us straight, give it to me straight, give it to leadership straight, with even some of our, like I said, guys and girls that have been, I can think of 4 or 5 people, here at Mayhem that I value their opinion 100%. And it may not even be correct all the time, but I try to encourage that, hey, let me know what you think here. Like, give us me, like, I'm pretty, I at times, people close to me would say I'm pretty emotional. So I can take the criticism at times. I can't, there's some things that will hit a nerve every once in a while. But I encourage kind of I encourage the open dialogue. Like, you start pushing me on the Detroit Lions or Notre Dame, then we're going to, I'm going to get in fighting. But, but for the most part, I think it's just building miles with people and letting them see that they can trust, or that there's some trust there, and they feel like, if they say something, even if it's something that I don't necessarily agree with in the moment, that we can have some dialogue. I think that's what we're missing in the country, in the world right now, is that when you disagree with somebody, it doesn't have to be a complete split in friendships or in families. Like, we can disagree. We're not going to agree on everything. And man, I wish I would have figured that.
Yeah, I think when it is in this digital landscape we live on, people can just swipe to the next video. They can turn off a video, and you should never try to turn off someone. Like, you can also listen to someone, and this was hard for me. I can listen to someone and say, wow, that's an interesting perspective, and it doesn't rub off on me. initially.
Nope.
Like if I say, hey, I heard you out, I totally disagree with you, but I listened to you and I don't have to accept that. Yeah. So,
and I think it's hard. I think it's hard for me, and it's something that I've come to terms with lately. Is and I'm just using the U.S. as an example. Like obviously, I think faith should be a huge part of who we are and our identity, but we have to encourage. Like there's almost it needs to be intertwined, but almost disconnected at times. Like I try to think of like free speech. Like everybody has it. Like while I agree with it from the American perspective, at times I don't agree with it from a faith perspective, and so it's hard to it's hard for people that aren't of faith to understand where we're coming from. It's just it's something that I'm still, at times I'm like, all right, I need to temper this back a little bit, see if I can look at it from a different, and it just comes with age, I think. And like we're saying with miles with people and seeing that there are other perspectives and there's value, maybe not in 100% of their perspective, but you can take something from just about everybody. I'd be careful on the internet though, like you said. It's a little bit different.
I want to go back to identity, and I know during the CrossFit Games that you placed second. I know that I shouldn't bring it up.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
That event we definitely don't want to talk about, but to bring down an identity, and that was a big revelation for you. And so, can you speak to that, because somebody might be going through a valley, and it's hard to definitely trust God in a mountaintop. It's also sometimes hard to let go our identity and our ego in those valleys as well.
Yeah. I think for me, like I said, it was whatever I was doing at the time had become who I was. And that's how I got my recognition or my pay or whatever it was. And so those things of the world can be taken so quickly. I mean, and as bad as it sounds, you can put your identity in your family, and it is, whatever you want to call it, and since the beginning since Adam and Eve.
I mean, that's
it's those things that they're worldly things, and they're taken from you. Like nothing of this world is permanent. We know that, and we know that the only one thing, Jesus, is the reason, and that is our identity. And for me, that was that realization, I think, and that kind of aha moment of it doesn't matter what I do. Like, and even now, I'm 2 years out of competing, and people have short memories. It is what it is. And people, obviously they're going to remember, but it's still, people have short memory. When you're in the spotlight, you're in the moment, things are great. And then as soon as you're out, you're kind of like, oh, what's left? And so if I didn't have that basis, if I didn't have that, have my faith or have Jesus, then it would be tough. And not to say that there's days where you're like, those things start to creep in and those idols start to creep in. And for me, like I said, having faith is that anchor value, that value that I always come back to. And then I know that, hey, I need to get in the Word. I need to listen to worship music. I need people to hold me accountable. Like the group of mentors that I have that, kind of encourage each other, and to have a good basis and all that stuff. It's not something that is easy, like I think everybody thinks, oh, and I also hate the fact that people are like, oh, you think just because you're doing it for God, He's made you win. And, and that Christians aren't, like, you still can't be aggressive. You still can't be competitive. I think it's the exact opposite. Like, I know I can compete from a position of strength because I want to win, but I know that if I lose, I'm still going to be very angry, but I know that I'm okay. But I can compete from a way better position than I can if I'm worried about, if I lose here, is my family going to be okay? And, it has nothing to do with that now. Like, I can compete from a position of strength.
So good. I think it's so important to talk about anchoring, because we can have our identity wrapped up in what we do. Is very easy to do. And things like family and money and a business can become quickly an idol in all of our lives. And it's oftentimes one of the, I don't know, the suspects of when you're actually, feeling this idolization is worry. And so in your life, if you have worry, then that's because you've displaced God from His throne, and you've put your business, your family, in that position. And so I think it's a lot of maturity to have that identity change. And again, I love the Galatians 6:14. I know that as a big grounding anchor for you. And then assembling that group of mentors it shouldn't be missed. I mean, we all need a group of mentors. I do want to transition and hear more about, you mentioned it, but I want to spend some time talking about CrossFit Mayhem's priorities: faith, family, fitness, service. How'd you come up with that? How is that lived out?
Yeah, I think I always come back. Jim Hensel he's a great guy around here. He's got Mayhem Mindset. We've kind of partnered with him. And what I like most about it, he's a faith guy. Those are his values. Those are my values, a lot of us, so we connect well. But he's big on defining who you are. Like, why do you believe what you believe? Who are you? And then having words and defining those words. And we may have the same words, but how does it mean a little bit different? But being able to put those things into action. Everybody thinks they have, who they are, but really words and language and having something to come back to. And so he's kind of has, basically you come up with 10 values. And so through those values, I decided faith, family, fitness, service was Mayhem's values. Having 10 is a little bit tough to aim at. From a business perspective, as an individual, you can do that. But from a business, I feel like ours are pretty, it's pretty easy to follow. Most or all of our decisions that come up or anything, all right, how does it affect our faith, family, fitness, service? Are we hitting those things with this? And it helps us make, pretty easy not easy decisions. We still have some hard decisions to make from time to time. But as long as it aligns with those 4 things, then we know it's going to be something that aligns with our company. And so also it's a way to kind of grade, are we doing what we're called to do and what we feel like we're supposed to do? And so, and immediately you as weird as it sounds, you alienate the people that don't believe in what you believe. But if we are who we say we are and that's how we're going to live, then that's what I would rather do that. The older I get, I'd rather be more authentic and be the person that I'm going to be, and tell people about Jesus and what we're doing here. And that's where we made that decision. It's been probably about 6-7 years ago.
I think that's a lot of wisdom there. I think priorities are so important because they help us make those decisions so much quicker, so much better decisions when we actually know what our priorities are, our values are. What about for those that maybe have some values? I'm sure that it's easier to always lean on the one that comes easiest. Like it's easy for me, like faith, family, fitness, and service. I'm going to use yours as an example. Like maybe family comes in easier. But that's probably not where we need to work the hardest.
Nope.
One that obviously comes easiest.
Yeah. So Jim, we can get way deep in the weeds, but he has strength goals, and then he has what does he call it? Weakness goals. And so you basically would do the opposite of values. Sorry, not goals. Values. So if procrastination is a weakness, you would do intent. And so he kind of has 3 values that are like strength goals, values, and then 3 weakness, and you do the opposite. And so those are things that you need to work on. And he's, he changes his goals from year to year as a person. He might have 5 or 6 that stay the same, but he changes 2 to 3 based on the previous year. And so for me and for us, obviously here, the one that sticks out, that's probably the easiest is fitness. It's like, it's who I am. It's what I have to do. I have to do something every day. I feel best. And then family is probably of the 4, family and fitness are the 2 easiest ones. And so I like faith is an intent. Like I get up in the morning, either listen to, or we go through, it's called Through the Word. And there's a little kind of devotional or like 10-minute talk about whatever verse is of the day. And I need to make sure I hit that either in the morning or sometime middle of the day, because it gets kind of crazy once the kids get out of school. And then service, like whatever projects come up or whatever we're doing through Mayhem Mission throughout the year, those are pretty easy to hit too. But my 2 easiest are family and fitness. And so I've got to, as bad as it sounds, make an intent and find some quiet time, because if there's chaos going on in the background, the reading is a little bit more difficult for me.
Completely understand. I think that is a great practice. I do want to throw you a curveball. You know, a lot of people probably look at you and say, wow, you know, if I could only be this fit, if I could only be this healthy. But, you know, you've not only known some physical struggles with injuries. I want to talk about some emotional injuries, which is probably hard to talk about. I can talk personally about this myself. You know, me and my wife have personally went through over a 3-year struggle with infertility. And you and your wife, Hillary, know what it's like going through a storm. And so I'd love for you to speak to someone that's going through a storm like that with fertility. Maybe they're going through a dark place for another reason, a financial storm, and they're waiting on God. And so if you'll talk about that period of waiting, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll go through. I've got a couple really, you know, I lost a grandma when I was pretty young that I was super close to. My best friend in the world, my cousin, we were 11 days apart. He passed in 2007. And both of those were kind of in that period before I would say that I was living for God. And so, you know, those hung on for a while and they still hurt, you know. There's still times like we went up to Michigan this past weekend for a wedding, and I'm just thinking about those two while we were up there. You know, I don't go up there regularly, and so probably once a year. And those hurt a little bit. But, you know, talking about the infertility thing, you know, it's so, you don't think about it, you know, like we had this plan of, you know, we'll have 2 to 3 kids, biological kids, and then we'll adopt one, you know, do our Christian duty and do that. And so God was like, yeah, that's not a good plan. I've got a better one. And you know, it's tough, man. For me, it was hard, but just to watch your wife go through that, you know, I'm a little bit, like I said, as bad as it sounds at times, I'm emotional, but watching her kind of struggle through, you know, every time she'd think she was pregnant, and then it wouldn't happen. And, you know, to her, she lost a baby, which, you know, we didn't miscarry or anything like that. And we went through all the tests and you know, tried all the different things and nothing worked. And we got right to the point of doing IVF. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather adopt than pay for a chance, you know, like I don't know what's going to happen. And there was, like I said, still is no biological reason. And we've been married 13 years and still, you know, not pregnant. So, you know, God knew what he was doing, and I think trusting in those situations, and ours turned out incredible. You know, like I can't think my 3 kids, and until people bring it up, I don't even think about them being adopted anymore. And at no point have I ever thought, oh, I'd love a biological child even more. And my kids are my kids, and if you know our kids, you know, there's no doubt that they're ours. And so it's you know, they obviously their situations would have been infinitely different, and ours would be infinitely different. So man, I just tell people that it's going to get better. So, you know, and it's hard to think about it from a man's perspective. Hillary wrote a book, and she, you know, I wish I had the book before or while we were going through it, so I knew what she was going through, because at times, you know, it's hard for me to level, because she's a very, you know, not in a bad way, she's an emotional woman. Not all women, but a lot of women are emotional, and it's hard for me to, you know, for me, it was until we had a kid, it wasn't our kid. But for her, like I said, every one of those situations, she was losing something, and I didn't recognize that, and wish now that I knew that, you know. So it's tough, but man, there's always light on the other side.
It's easy for us guys to, you know, compartmentalize and say, you know, a woman's just being emotional. But it's for us, it'd be like if someone took CrossFit from you, instead of you putting, you know, CrossFit games down. If someone took that from you, just like if someone was in the military and they had a disability from their service that pulled them out from their comrades before they ever wanted that to happen. I mean, and that's what it can be like for a lady. So I do want to talk about adoption, though, because how did that change your view of our Heavenly Father? And
oh, man, I'd never understood unconditional love, I guess, until I had kids, first of all. You know, like they can be the meanest, nastiest, rotten things, and then say a couple words, I love you, Dad. And it completely changes everything. And so, man, it's, you know, and I never really thought about, you know, like us being adopted, you know, and man, it's the love I have for those kids, you can't even quantify it. So, you know, that To say that God loves you more than that, I don't know how it's I guess it's not humanly possible. It's not possible. And so, exactly. So, yeah, man, those kids they're just, I tell everybody, until you have kids, you don't understand, unconditional love. It's something special. It's something powerful. And then just to it's the most important job there is, I think, being a dad.
Yeah. I think it's, Romans and Hebrews talks about this adoption that, he came for us dead in our sins. And I think it's a beautiful picture that he put his name on us. Like, we were Gentiles. Like, there was no chance. We were not like this chosen people group like Israel was, that
right.
He came for us. And that's in a small microscopic way of what you did for your children. It's like, they're your kids and you put your name on them. And I think back, going full circle to identity, it's like, just by saying my last name is McNair, my last name is Christian, if I put my label as Christian and my last name as my label, again, it's not works-based salvation, but how can you have faith with no works? I mean, that's impossible. If I'm truly my family heritage and we stand for something and my family has values, then you're going to see those values in my life. Or you'll look at me and you'll say, I don't think he was adopted at all. It doesn't act like anybody from that family. When you see the Hobby Lobby family, we've had them on the podcast, the Green family, they have a generous spirit because those are the values they uphold. And so I think that's for anyone that, calls himself a Christian is ask yourself, do I look like I'm adopted? Do I fit in with this family? If not, I need to introspectively go back to the Word and say, what does it look like to be adopted and following Christ? So I do want to talk about, you have a lot of different service in your life, but I want to talk about Mayhem Mission. What's the work you do there? How urgent is it? How can we pray? How can we give? And tell us more.
Yeah. So Mayhem Mission I guess technically it started, 2000, I want to say the first time we did Mayhem for Mustard Seed. So Mustard Seed Ranch is a non-denominational Christian home for at-risk youth in the area. So instead of them going to state custody, there's a couple houses there where they have house parents, and they try to keep kids from getting split up. So they have a boys' home and a girls' home, and try to keep these kids as in a home type manner versus some type where they're getting passed around. And so for years, we did this event called Mayhem for Mustard Seed, and we would raise money. We built a couple houses through them and supported them as they kind of grew. And then COVID kind of hit, and so couldn't do anything, when it was crazy for a year or two. We were actually bringing it back this year for the first time. But in that process, our CFO, Brian Nelson, he's real big on international missions. I've just kind of been local with, what we see going on here. And he's big on international stuff. So we were like, hey, he kind of came on as a CFO. He's been our financial advisor for years. And I was like, let's do something. And he 100%. So we've created Mayhem Mission, which is a 501. And instead of tackling one kind of thing or specializing in one thing, we'll come along organization. So we kind of have 4 pillars of human trafficking, water, at-risk youth, and then unreached people groups. And so we'll kind of do different events throughout the year. We've done workouts, and we partnered with Atlas Free for human trafficking. We've partnered with Never Thirst for water. And then we partner with a couple different organizations for at-risk youth, and then also, like I said, the unreached people groups. So I think last year or this year, we'll have gone on 4 or 5 missions this year. So it continues to grow, and it's been really cool. And not even within us, we have a member here that does, it's called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And you take basically raw lumber, and through a bunch of different stations, you build beds. And you build bunk beds or whatever beds for kids that sleeping on the floor, sleeping on couches, and people can apply for these beds. And so one of the coolest things ever is watching my 5-year-old use power tools to assemble one of these beds in a house. I came here and it was a couple hundred people. We built 76 beds in a couple hours. And then
so cool.
I was like, Rebo, let me know when you're delivering. We're taking the kids. And so we take it to this house, and watching my youngest and all three of my kids use power tools, but watching a 5-year-old get fired up about using a power tool is pretty cool. And then just the perspective of them leaving the house saying, like, they actually live there, you know? And so it was cool. It was eye opening, and it's just something that until you do stuff like that, it's hard to really put into words.
And that's what the show
how much you can affect.
Know, you can leave a financial legacy to your children, but how much better to show your children, like, hey, here's what families that are going truly out with their physical needs and who need help with their physical needs, but also need help with their spiritual needs. I mean, that is a really cool legacy to be leaving to your kids. Very cool. I love the 4 pillars too. I mean, all of those that you mentioned, there's exponential need and exponential impact once you start helping and pushing forward on those areas. How can people give? How can they find out more information?
Yeah, mayhemmissions.org. We have an Instagram, and basically what we've done the first 2 quarters of the year, we'll do a workout. And so, you pay $5-10 and do a workout, and that money goes to whichever charity. So the Atlas free workout, it'll be, I don't know the exact dates. Don't check out our Instagram for that. And then the water event will be after that. And so the water event's pretty fun because you're holding water jugs or dumbbells. And so there's like each of the workouts kind of have some meaning with the numbers, and like I said, just some things to think about while you're doing the workout. So it's like that kind of the listening to worship music while you're doing the workout. CrossFit's real big on hero workouts and having meaning while doing the workout. So you're doing it for something bigger than yourself. And so that's kind of what we've done with the workouts. And then, oh man, we'd love to have people go on some missions with us. And I need to get on one, need to take the kids. They're getting to the age where they can travel. So last year we did I did the Leadville 100 mountain bike. And so this year, I think we're going to partner with the Legacy Foundation, and 10 people can raise some money to do the race with us too. So I think it'll be pretty fun. We haven't entirely announced that yet, so you'll get first kind of crack at that. We've got to finish it all up, but I'm pretty fired up for that.
I love it. Well, I love just that not only do you talk about your faith, you're living it out with service and you're giving. And I do want you to speak to that person maybe that's listening right now who has never given to a worthy cause for as long as they can remember, maybe not ever tithed to their local church. What advice would you give them to help them get started?
Man, I think it's give something that costs you something. Like you can give money, and if it's something that is easy, it's not as rewarding. If you don't have any skin in the game, I encourage people to go out and do as well, like give up your time. Like time is the most important resource that we have. And when you get into these organizations and see the impact that they're making, and it just feels better. Like it's hard to put into words and hard to speak to that until you've actually done it. And like I said, and if you have kids, if you have others that you love, bring them with you and watch what it does to them as well. It's like I said, that watching my kids kind of see the importance of that, like you can't put into words how cool that is. We have this kind of thing, and I hate motivational quotes. I hate kind of just, if you can dream it, you can do it. But we have our Into the Storm, and it's become something that's it's pretty cool. Like nothing in life that's easy is that rewarding. When you give a little bit of yourself or your time or it's something difficult, you learn a lot about yourself, and then it's just so much better. That's the whole point of
working out. I mean, that's the whole point of CrossFit. Like,
that's right.
You want to have,
that's right.
For a good workout, you might lose literally some skin in the workout, and that's part of the
some skin or soul, whatever whatever you want to call it. But yeah,
I think you're spot on.
And so I think it's
not just money; it's leaving the time, the talents, and using you as a person and all that you've been given towards the glory of Christ. So, I mean, you're spot on.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's like I said, it's hard to put into words, or just the feeling you get when you give something that costs you something. That's the biggest thing. Like, yeah, if you're giving money and you don't even see where that money goes, it's until you get there and get in the trenches with it, you're like, all right, this is pretty cool.
A couple fun quick aim questions.
All right, let's go.
what would you say to the CrossFitter, someone that is consumed with working out, which is nothing wrong with being watching your inputs, watching your outputs, but maybe they're a little too focused, but you want to encourage them not to, waste their life or make the most of their life?
Man, have fun and impact people. That's the big thing is like, I always tell people they get so caught up in, what do I got to do to get to the next level? And it's like, if that's what you're in it for, it's going to get tough. Like there's days where that's not fun. So on those days when you can have some fun, get with people, people are going to community. That's the beauty, I think, of CrossFit. Yeah, the methodology is incredible and it's great. But the community is what kind of keeps people coming back.
This, I guess we call it a tweet. We'll call it a tweet for now. Maybe it's an X. I don't know what they're referring to it as now.
Yeah.
If you could write one tweet that would be read by every CrossFitter in the world, what would it say?
Oh, man.
No pressure.
No pressure. I think it's like, I don't know exactly the wording, but I think the community side of it, it's kind of the cop out, but man, that's, like I said, I think that's what makes CrossFit the best is like I said, the methodology is obviously proven it works, but without people, without impacting others' lives, without interacting with others, then it's just another workout, even if you're working out at the house and there's still an online community out there. And I think that's one of the big things that we do at Mayhem is we push that community side even online. And it's fitness is better with people, life is better with people. And so community is huge.
What are maybe a common misconception that people have about you or CrossFit that you'd like to clear up once and for all?
Yeah, I think, the hard part about my life is every part of it is filmed, but I think the whole Mayhem's only for the elites. We've got every walk of life in here. We've got, 5-year-olds all the way to Hollings. I think Hollings our oldest member at 83 years old. And, CrossFit's for everybody. Like everybody, I guess that's my favorite one is people think, I got to get fit before I do CrossFit. And that's not true. That's kind of the point of CrossFit. So, find a place, find a good gym. If you can find a Mayhem affiliate, we've got a bunch across the world now that do our programming. And if you find a good spot, then you'll have a ton of fun.
Well, where can they find out more information on the Mayhem Network?
Yeah, so mayhemnation.com is kind of our, that's all things Mayhem that we have going on here. On Instagram, it's just the CrossFit Mayhem. We have Mayhem Athlete is another resource for all that. If you go to mine, just Rich Froning on both, I guess, Instagram and X, whatever it is, Twitter now, you'll get pointed in the direction of our stuff as well too. So it's we've got an incredible community here. I think I've said community probably 50 times, but that's what it's about.
I mean, that's what fellowship is about. It shouldn't. That's right. That's another one of those fruit. If you think about it, is a lot of people, they want to do their faith solo. Yeah. And it was never meant to be solo. I mean, nope. Christ talked about fellowship. He hung out with 12 dudes.
12 dudes,
three close bros. And so that's what we should live out the same way is you can't be a Lone Ranger Christian. There's just no such thing.
Not possible.
One more time, Mayhem Mission. So I would love to.
Mayhem Mission. Yep.
Well, how do we find it? How do we give towards it?
Yeah, mayhemmission.org. If you go to mayhemnation.com, it'll all be on there. There are monthly plans. There's, like I said, there's ways that you can just do the workouts with us. There's if you check out Mayhem Nation, go to the Mayhem Missions.org or Mayhem Mission tab. It'll be on there, and it'll tell you everything that we're doing and what we're up to.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing more information about it.
I appreciate you having me on here, man. You have to come out to Cookeville.
Well, that's all we have for this episode of Rich Young and Powerful Podcast. One thing that would really help us both and other new potential listeners is for you to rate our show on iTunes or Spotify. And also check out our YouTube channel, The Everyday Philanthropist, to get your answers to the questions you have about tithing philanthropy. And also check out richyoungandpowerful.com/book to get a copy of my book, The Giving Crisis, to hear my story from going greedy to generous, and you can check it out there. So until next time, remember that when a giver gives more, they receive and become more. See you next time.